So UFC 310, Pantoja versus Asakura is officially in the books, which means that it is time for me to give my full card post-fight reaction, recap, and analysis for every single fight that took place on this card. And guys, I first want to give my initial reactions because I see a lot of people online are like, I didn't really like this card. I didn't think it was that great. And I actually really enjoyed this card. I think that there was a lot of interesting moments. There were a lot of things that actually surprised me, which we'll discuss throughout the video. But I will go ahead and put the time codes down below. So if there's specific fights you want to hear me discuss. But guys, like I said, I thought that this was actually a good card. We saw that one, Alexandre Pantoja is that dude, right? You got to put some respect on this guy's name. I've been saying for the longest time that I've been beating this into the ground, man. And I know that, maybe people are getting annoyed every time I talk about Pantoja. I'm like, this is the most underrated fighter in UFC history. And I really think that he is. And I think that he should be pound for pound higher than Jon Jones. There's an argument for it, right? And especially when you go out there and you beat a guy like Kai Asakura, the new kid on the block, the UFC's pumping all this promotion into him. They're trying to tap in, to that Japan market. So the goal and the agenda was very clear from the UFC, but Pantoja goes, I'm that guy, man, and gets it done. We had a lot of controversy on this card. There were a lot of great finishes, a lot of good, really, really good moments, especially, for Vicente Luque, and there were some other ones that I want to discuss. Top to bottom, thought it was a good card, right? And the last card of the year, there's always high expectations. People just expect there to be a 10-second KO in every single fight. I thought we saw a lot of great things, so I'm excited to go through this card. And let's hop right into this. I will start with the main event of the evening, and that was between Pantoja and Kai Asakura. I thought that this was an outstanding fight, right? And what did we get here? So we had a performance of the night. So Pantoja got performance of the night for this, but I think that this fight went pretty much how a lot of us were expecting this to go. Look, Kai Asakura, this isn't the end for him, right? He's 31 years of age. He comes over to the UFC. He's very explosive, and you got to see that, right? In the first round, he looked great. He looked fantastic, and that's what I was expecting. A guy that was going to do what got him to the dance, which was being very explosive, being very fast, being, very twitchy on the feet to where if Pantoja was going to try to close the distance, he was going to have to be careful. And you saw that flying knee that I kept highlighting in my videos. I'm like, look, he's going to try that whenever Pantoja tries to just come crashing forward with those blitzing combinations and try to make him pay because he knows the avenue for Pantoja to win this fight was to go to the grappling. Not to say that Pantoja couldn't hurt him on the feet because, again, Pantoja landed a lot of really good shots. He actually even hurt Asakura on the feet. But for me, it was really going to be in that first round and even into the second to where Kai was going to have that window of opportunity considering how fast he is and a guy that was at 135 coming down to 125. Obviously, I was concerned. I'm like, is the power going to translate? Is the gas tank going to translate? Whenever you're dropping that extra weight, what are you going to look like? He looked great. I thought he looked fast. I thought he looked explosive. And again, the UFC, totally different ball game in the top of the heap in these divisions than in some of these other promotions. And we all kind of knew that coming into this. But I was impressed by Kai, right? So I want to give him his due because this was a huge step up in competition. I kept saying, guys, Pantoja is the best fighter that Kai Asakura has fought by far. Hands down the best fighter he's faced because Alexandre's really got no weaknesses. He's durable as hell. He's tough. He's got a relentless pace. He's got this crazy will to just find a way to win, and he's very well-rounded. And I thought that what was going to give him some issues was if he was not able to get Alexandre out of there early, which he wasn't, Pantoja was eventually going to get to the grappling. And when he got to those positions, I just didn't think Kai Asakura was going to be able to survive. And if he did, and he was able to keep this, on the feet, I could have seen how we could have seen a decision. But that's why I said, Pantoja maybe wins by decision, but I could definitely see a submission happening if he is able to get to the back. Because when it comes to the rear naked choke, especially in the flyweight division, Pantoja's the best. He absolutely is the best. He has outstanding submissions. The way that this guy finds a way to win in every single fight. You want to see him in a dog fight, he'll make it happen. You want to see him go out there and sub somebody, he'll make it happen. You want to see him hurt somebody on the feet, he'll make it happen. This is one of the best flyweights of all time. I'm not going to maybe go as far to say the flyweight GOAT right now because I think Demetrius Johnson is probably still that guy, right? I mean, Mighty Mouse has an unbelievable resume, one of the best fighters of all time. But Pantoja is definitely on track, man. And to be 34 years of age, going in there and this new kid on the block, this very, very fun and explosive striker like Kai, this wasn't an easy fight for Pantoja. This was not a layup, and you got to see what the UFC thought of Kai, man. They brought this guy over for, he was a champion over in Ryzen. He has all of the, the attributes and all of the skills to cause anyone in the UFC flyweight division problems. The question that I had was, you're getting thrown right into a title shot, and you're not just getting thrown in there against, just some ranked guy in the division, the best guy in the division, and not just one of the best, like I keep saying, one of the best flyweights of all time and one of the most underrated fighters of all time and champions for that fact. And I think Pantoja, man, this was a crazy win. I mean, look at the stats here. He outstruck Kai Asakura, right? And I know there's the, the grappling element to where Kai has to be, a little bit concerned, considering that I feel like we all knew Pantoja was probably going to have the advantage there, but he secured 3 takedowns, went for the 1 submission, and was able to, get the choke there, and then significant strikes. He outstruck Kai Asakura. So it shows you how good Pantoja is, man. And that's what I'm trying to advocate to people is you have to give this guy his due. He doesn't have to be your favorite fighter. He doesn't have to be the most entertaining guy to you. But when it comes to finding a way to win fights, this is one of the best fighters in the UFC right now, in the organization, when it comes to that. He always finds a way to win. He will take you to where he believes you have the disadvantage and he has the advantage. It's a lot like Jon Jones, right? When Jon Jones, people look at him as, one of the greatest ever. What Jon does such a great job of is he comes into these fights and he's like, look, I'm super well-rounded. I'm good everywhere. I'm probably better than you in a specific area. And I'm going to, we could stand and kind of play the game that you're good at, but when I get you to that position and into those areas that you're not good at, I'm going to exploit you. I'm going to make you look like a fool. And we saw that with Pantoja. And Kai Asakura did a pretty good job defending takedowns early, which I expected because he's a very fast starter, very explosive. And you got to see that, right? He's very, very, very fun to watch. That's what I mentioned to you guys. I'm like, look, there's no way, as good as Pantoja is, I don't think this is going to be a boring fight because all of the fights that I could watch and all the tape, that I watched on Asakura, not a boring fight. The guy is always in a crazy fight. And if he's losing, it's because he's getting into an absolute barn burner with somebody and he's getting caught with something or whatever. That's usually how this guy's fights go. He's either KOing somebody or getting KO'd. And he goes out there most of the time and is able to get people out of there. So this is a fun style of fighter. And Kai, the UFC absolutely still has a star on their hands. I don't think that Kai's stock goes down at all from losing this fight, considering he looked great early on, right? He was landing some really good kicks to the body. That knee is absolutely dangerous. He's got a really, really good pull counter right hand. But to me, it showed levels, right? It showed how good Pantoja is, how he is able to, in these big moments, thrive and just find a way to win fights. And I just figured that I don't think the moment was too big for Asakura. I just think that this was a gap when it came to the grappling against Pantoja because, again, Kai in the back of his mind knew, like, oh man, if Pantoja gets a hold of me, it's going to be a problem because Alessandre, like I said, probably has the best submissions in the flyweight division right now. And all around, this dude's an absolute savage. I don't know what they do for him next. I don't know who the next contender is going to be because, look, they had to go to a different promotion to find someone to, to come in and fight Pantoja. And guys, I want to say this again. This was the most excited I've been for a flyweight fight or a flyweight title fight in forever, right? And we got to give credit to the UFC for going out and finding a way to spice up the division. Do I think that the UFC probably wanted Kai to win? Yeah, probably, right? Because then they have a Japan champion. They can go over to, to Japan. Like, there was all of that going on, and his style is really fun, right? And it creates a whole new avenue of matchups. But to me, this also kind of helped Pantoja. It introduced Pantoja to new fight fans and really got to show how good he is. So I really don't know what they do for him next. There's not many. There's maybe the Kai Kara France rematch. There's some names floating around. But to me, this guy is one of the best flyweights of all time already. And by the time he hangs it up, I know he said he wanted to fight Demetrius Johnson. I don't know that Mighty Mouse comes back, right? The guy's making a ton of money off of YouTube. He did a lot of things over in one championship. I don't know, considering his relationship seems kind of hairy with Dana White, the UFC. So I don't know if we see that. I would love to see it because I think if anyone is going to beat Pantoja, it would be a guy with super high fight IQ, super well-rounded skill set like Mighty Mouse. I just don't know that that's likely unless the UFC throws an absolute crazy amount of money at Mighty Mouse. Because again, money can sometimes talk. But again, Demetrius is making a bunch of money off YouTube right now. So I don't know. I would love to see the fight, but again, not the end for Kai Asakura. There's a lot of fun matchups in this division for him. He's a fun striker. I'd love to see them go to Japan and do a fight night and have him headline it, put Tatsuro Taira on the card as well. I think that would be fun. I think that would be, a big event for the UFC. I think that that's what they look to do, but give Pantoja his respect, man. This guy is absolutely spectacular, incredibly well-rounded. The fact that he was able to hurt Asakura on the feet, ultimately, find a submission, very impressive victory for Pantoja. Like I said, he was going to have a point to prove coming into this. Oh, you're going to bring in this new kid? You think that he's just going to come in here and take what's mine? He doesn't even have to fight one time in the organization to get a title shot? You disrespected me, man. And I think that was the attitude of Alessandro that gave him this little extra edge that I feel like he had this week to where I just felt very confident in him finding a way to get this thing done. So great performance by Pantoja. And again, I don't think Asakura's stock goes down because, again, you got thrown right into a title shot. You showed some really good moments. It was just the grappling I figured was going to be an issue. Still a great matchup. And again, a finish inside the flyweight division. So whenever we could get that, the UFC's doing something right with the matchmaking. But moving on to the co-main event of the evening, the UFC's got some weird shit going on with the website here. We have Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Garry, and Shavkat getting the unanimous decision victory over Ian. Look, I think that with this fight, a lot of us had the same idea, right? It was going to be, well, look, Shavkat, he's the boogeyman in this division. He's undefeated, 18 wins. All of them were by finish coming into the fight. And then with Ian, he was also undefeated coming into this. So it was like, well, someone's O has got to go. And I think Ian did himself a lot of favors, right? I even made a video highlighting this. I think that he won a lot of fans back from, just the lead up to this fight, accepting this fight against Shavkat when he was supposed to be fighting a week later against Buckley. Very, very different matchup. So whenever you do those kinds of things and you back up, this brash talk and you say that you're going to do all these things and you go out there and you do those things, I think that your stock rises, and I think that, fans respect that type of thing. And that's what I think we started to see with Ian Garry. And all that being said, I actually thought Ian Garry did pretty good in this fight. I thought that there were some moments, and at the end of the day, I know he's saying, like, look, I don't think I lost. I mean, you did lose, but I understand kind of what he's saying to a degree. He's like, look, I made Shavkat look human. No one else has done that, and he's exactly right. He's exactly right. And whenever you lose fights, sometimes, especially when it's your first one in your pro career, you try to find those moments that kind of give you, some good news, right, from the fight. And I think that at the end of the day, Ian can sit there and say, Shavkat didn't finish me. He finished 18 other people. He went in there. He didn't finish me. I was standing right in front of the guy. I was even having some really, really good moments in the grappling. So I really think Ian Machado Garry, I don't think his stock went down at all. He stepped up to take this fight when no one else would, right? The UFC, was making some calls around from what we heard. No one wanted that. No one wanted the smoke. And how badass is Shavkat to say, you know what, I'll risk it. I already had a title shot. I could have just waited until Bilal got healthy. He's like, no, I haven't fought in a while. I'm competing. So this fight right here, to me, was the one that I was super stoked for because I was like, we have undefeated versus undefeated. Both guys are outstanding. What I was really, really impressed with in this fight was how good Shavkat looked on the feet. How good he looked on the feet because he hurt Ian Garry bad with that right hand. He was moving forward. He was pushing the pace. And, what you got to see about Shavkat in this matchup is he can go in there with one of the better strikers in the division in Ian Garry and stand right in front of him with really not many issues, right? I thought that we were going to see Ian attack the lead leg of Shavkat maybe a little bit more to try to hinder the movement, not allow him to just plant off that lead leg and attempt takedowns and explode in and out because, again, I figured Shavkat was going to have the power advantage because both of these guys are tall, right? But when I look at Shavkat, I'm like, that's a big dude. Like, he's tall, but he's a big guy for the weight class. And I was just beyond impressed from what we saw, for both dudes, but really with Shavkat. I mean, to go out there and get a win over Ian Garry, be the first person to beat him, is obviously very impressive. But it was the fashion in which he did it, right? Whenever he gets to the clinch, and that's one of those areas when it comes to Rakhmonov that I think maybe doesn't get the shine that it deserves, and that is the fact that this guy is a monster inside the clinch, right? Whenever he's able to push you forward, throw a couple shots, back you up against the fence, get into the tie clinch, start letting some of those knees go, and then eventually he will look for the takedowns, for the trips, for the sweeps, and then that's how he gets you down. It's not like Shavkat's diving across the cage like Khamzat Chimaev, getting a hold of you and putting you on your ass and then working for the grappling. That's really not his game plan. He likes to get to the clinch, push you up against the fence, kind of bully you around, and Ian had some answers, right? Ian did get taken down, and there were some moments that were looking a little froggy, but he was able to get back to his feet. He was able to get the separation. He was actually able to get to Shavkat's back and look for some submissions. But for me, my takeaway is this. Shavkat is just that damn good. He's good everywhere. He's got outstanding power. He's got a diverse skill set in terms of the striking. And when it comes to the grappling, he is just, he's a monster. He's a threat, from all angles when it comes to the submissions, off his back, when he's on top, even in the clinch, he can find a way, to submit people. So what's next ahead? I mean, Ian Garry, I don't think he's far off from another title fight, because whenever you step in and you do favors for the UFC and you step in and take fights that, other people aren't willing to take, the UFC does you favors, right? When Kamaru Usman went out there on short notice against Khamzat Chimaev and stepped up, or Volkanovski stepped up against Islam Makhachev to save a card, the UFC remembers those kinds of things. So it sometimes doesn't always take you to do a ton of things to put yourself back in a great position whenever you step up and help save events. And so I think Ian Garry, I think he goes out there and wins another fight or two, puts himself right back in position, to possibly have a title opportunity. And considering if Shavkat is able to hold the belt sometime soon, I think that there's a rematch for sure, because both guys, someone's had to go. They crossed paths, just the timing was great. They're both in their primes. But at the end of the day, the night belongs to Shavkat. It was an outstanding performance. He went in there, had a lot of success on the feet, which really surprised me, because I thought that Ian Garry was going to be much faster. And to me, he didn't look all that much faster, right? I think that there were times where it's like, oh, there goes Ian with the speed. But then when Shavkat would let his hands go and his combinations fly, that right hand, it was finding the chin of Ian over and over and over again. And I think one of the things I really noticed about Ian, he gets a little lazy with his defense, right? And I think that Henry Hooft, being involved with Shavkat in the camps and that these guys having trained together, I think that's something that Henry probably mentioned, saying, hey, when you throw that right hand, step through and throw it again, because Ian Garry kind of pulls away, drops his hands, and gets a little lazy because he's used to being the taller guy, right? Whenever you're that taller, longer guy in the division, you could get away with being a little lazier defensively by just kind of pulling away because you have the reach. But again, Shavkat couldn't get away with some of those things. And I think that cost Ian at moments and caused him to get hit by some shots that maybe normally he doesn't get hit with. But at the end of the day, Shavkat, very impressive performance. The guy is an absolute savage inside the division. This is the first fight where he gets a victory, but it's not by a finish. So I get where Ian's trying to find some bright spots in this, but he still lost the fight, right? Shavkat Rakhmonov, outstanding performance. Now, the best part about this whole thing for me, there were questions, right? It was like, oh, well, we don't really have a clear-cut contender, so we're just going to give Shavkat a title shot. And to me, I thought Shavkat put himself in position to be a guy that could get a title shot by going out there and, finishing Jeff Neal, finishing Wonderboy Thompson, because that's the competition the UFC put in front of him, right? I know that people are going to have some issues with that, but he just knocks down who the UFC puts in front of him. He finished all of those guys, and they're like, well, we really don't have anyone that necessarily is like really a clear-cut contender, so we're going to give Shavkat the opportunity to fight Belal for the title. And now we really have a clear-cut contender. You have an undefeated guy in Garry, undefeated guy in Shavkat. They both go in there. They duke it out. Shavkat gets it done. He is the rightful, without question, clear-cut contender. There's nothing that anyone can nitpick or say about this. Goes in there, gets a decision win over Ian Garry. Him versus Belal next. And at the end of the day, guys, I've said this. The Belal Muhammad that showed up at UFC 304 against Leon Edwards, I don't think that guy loses. I don't think that guy loses. And from what we saw from Ian Garry, I know Ian and Belal are very different styles. Shavkat's human, right? And we've seen this. Remember when Khamzat went out there, and he looked unbelievable against Robert Whittaker. When he went out there against Burns, when he went out there against Usman. Now, there were some different factors to maybe what prohibited Khamzat from having a great performance. But the point is, the narrative and the public eye is, oh, this guy's human, right? Someone can actually throw a punch and it lands and it can hit him, right? It's not like he's just, taking everybody down and destroying everybody, right? So the element of this boogeyman of, Shavkat's just closing people down and getting everyone out of there, that's still there, but it kind of got pulled back a little bit, right? So if I'm Belal and I'm watching that fight, I see if I apply pressure, if I let my hands go, if I blend the takedowns together, I think Belal can have a lot of success against Shavkat because I think that the pace and the pressure of Belal are going to be some issues. But again, the lack of finishing ability from Belal at times, I think is not going to, I don't think Shavkat is going to show Belal the same kind of respect that he may show someone like Ian Garry, who does have the ability to KO somebody on the feet. And we have seen Belal, go in there and finish Sean Brady. I'm just saying, on the record of Belal, not a ton of finishes. So I think Shavkat's going to have this mindset of, this guy's not finishing me. And I think he's going to come in confident and reckless to where I think Belal can kind of use that for to his advantage. What a great matchup, because I think when it comes to the grappling, I think Shavkat may have some answers for Belal. He definitely has better submissions than Belal. So I'm excited for that fight, man. I'm excited for that fight. And again, we have a clear-cut contender now. I like it, man. I like it. But moving on to Ciryl Gane versus Alexander Volkov. So this was a split decision that I actually thought the judges got wrong. I picked Gane to win this fight. And, what we saw in this was I thought Alexander Volkov won. I thought he won the fight. I thought that he did more damage than Ciryl Gane. And I know when you look at this, sometimes when you're watching it live, right, you're not necessarily looking at the statistics right away, but you see this here. Look, 105 total strikes to Gane's 48. Volkov landed 3 takedowns. There were a couple submission attempts from Gane. Significant strikes, 43, Gane, 39, Volkov. But to the eye, when I was watching this, Volkov landed a lot of really good shots, right? He landed that spinning back fist on Gane. He landed some good kicks to the body. He was throwing some head kicks in there. And I thought all around, I thought Volkov he did a little bit more, right? And I think that Gane, he said that he messed up his foot or his toes or whatever. So I'm sure, because a guy that moves around a lot, that's definitely going to have an impact. But either way, this was a close fight, right? So, and I know Dana White was up there saying he thought that Volkov won, and Volkov's like, look, he came up to me and said, I won the fight. And, I even think Gane and his team were surprised when they heard the decision. So I was as well, right? I thought that Volkov did enough to win the fight, but from what we saw, this was quite a bit different, right, than the first time around. And I thought that what was going to give Volkov some issues was the speed of Gane. Because whenever you watch Ciryl fight in this division, the only other guy that can probably match him when it comes speed for speed is Tom Aspinall, right? Because Tom Aspinall and Gane are these two dudes that just have like this, style that's like not really seen inside the heavyweight division. They're very light on the feet. They're very agile. And that's why I really want to see that matchup someday. But I figured that the speed, the footwork, and the technicalities of Ciryl were going to be a problem for Volkov. But what we saw is just this new version of Volkov. And I know that on paper here he lost this fight, but he looked great. I thought he looked spectacular. I thought that he looked a little bit leaner to me. I know he's not the fastest guy in the world. He was definitely more aggressive, right? Because the first meeting, he kind of just accepted being at range and kind of going back and forth with Gane. And he's like, okay, if I do that, I'm going to lose the fight. Because Gane, he's going to be faster. He's going to throw more strikes than me. He's going to probably have a higher output. I'm not going to win that style of fight. So you saw right when the fight started, he got right in Ciryl's face. He started backing him up, started pushing him up against the fence, secured a takedown, which I figured that was going to be something that Alexander was gonna try to utilize, was the grappling in this matchup. And again, Gane had some really good moments in the grappling, so we saw some improvements from him there. But I thought the more significant shots were landed by Volkov. I thought that he was a little bit busier in terms of the striking. I thought he won the fight. I did, but either way, I thought that this fight either way was very competitive, very close. And whenever you see rematches, there's kind of the question of, is it going to play out just the way it did the first time, where Gane just sits all pretty on the outside and picks him apart and kind of darts in and out? Is it going to play out like that? Or do we see that new version of Volkov where he's been rattling off all these wins, goes out there and just picks apart Sergey Pavlovich, and then comes into this fight here, and it's like, well, if that guy shows up and he mixes in the grappling, I like his chances. And I just wasn't sure that the speed, or that Volkov was going to be able to solve the speed of Gane. And turns out he actually had a perfect game plan, which was to be aggressive, be powerful, get to the grappling, mix things up, and keep Ciryl guessing. It was actually a really good game plan by Volkov. I thought he looked spectacular in this fight, and even though that he didn't win here, but I thought that he did enough to win the fight. But either way, it was a close back and forth matchup. Again, the game plan of Alexander was absolutely perfect. That's how I would have approached Gane to win the fight. just to the judge's eye, I guess, they just didn't see enough. So either way, close fight. I really enjoyed this one because stylistically, these are two heavyweights that every time you put them in there together, it's going to be an interesting fight. So again, Gane gets it done, but I really don't know where he goes from here, right? With Volkov, there's, I know he fought Aspinall and he's kind of been rattling off all these wins, but here we go again, right? Gane gets the W and he's, top of the division. Where does he go, right? The only guy that he hasn't really fought is Aspinall. So depending on how things can shake up, I think Gane versus Aspinall is a real possibility at some point. But again, I don't know where we go. So again, Volkov, he hasn't fought for a title, so what do we do here? It's kind of, rinse and repeat in the heavyweight division, a division that isn't very deep. But either way, great performance by both guys. Great performance by Volkov. And turns out, like I said, Gane was injured. So to be able to continue to go through that, very impressive by Surreal. Moving on, we Bryce Mitchell versus Gracie. I gave my thoughts on this coming into this. This should have been nowhere near a main card. I still don't understand why the UFC did this unless it was just they were trying to give Bryce Mitchell, because I've rattled this around in my head. I'm like, why the hell did the UFC do this? Why did they put this fight on the main card? Because it makes no sense, right? The only thing I could possibly think of is they were almost trying to set Bryce Mitchell up with a moment to where he could get a finish, he could get a win, and because it seems like a lot of people like Bryce Mitchell, right? He's kind of got this interesting personality, and, so maybe it was the UFC was trying to, after that brutal KO to Josh Emmett, he's a guy that had a lot of potential. He just lost to Topuria and Emmett, and outside of that, he's been a good fighter, right? He's rattled off some good wins. So it seemed to me like this was the UFC trying to build Bryce Mitchell back up because this fight had no business being on a main card. And the only bright spot really about this is that Bryce was actually able to get a TKO stoppage, because one of the things I said with this fight is I was like, look, Bryce is probably going to win by decision because he's not a guy that really finishes people in terms of ground and pound or knocking anybody out. And I'm like, you're probably not going to submit Gracie, right? That's probably not going to happen here. But this is the perfect example of if you have good jiu-jitsu skills, that is outstanding, right? And it absolutely is something that can be used in terms of MMA. But this isn't the 1990s anymore. That we're not going in a time capsule back in time. The fight game is way different than what it was back in the day. I mean, Gracie might as well just walk in there with a gi and wrap his black belt on and just go in there and just sit on the ground and wait for Bryce Mitchell to enter his guard. I mean, it literally looked, the way Gracie approaches these fights, it's like he should just be doing flow grappling or something, right? Or just doing jiu-jitsu competitions. This is a fight, right? And, just every time Bryce Mitchell closed the distance, Gracie just jumps and pulls guard every single time. And eventually that's going to probably be a problem, right? In terms of MMA, because it's different when you're sitting on the bottom. In jiu-jitsu and grappling, you can be a bottom player, right? You can try to work off your back and look for some submissions, look for sweeps and do some different things. Kron wasn't even looking for any sweeps. He was just very comfortable sitting with Bryce Mitchell in his guard, and I just don't get that, right? This is a very nuanced, MMA is very different than what it was back in the day, and whenever you're going to do that, guys can throw punches, right? I would not just want to be sitting on my back in MMA and just trying to play guard the whole time. That is a dangerous game to be playing unless you can find a submission, which again, Gracie almost did kind of find an armbar and then was looking for a triangle. His whole game plan was based off of that. So to me, Gracie is not an MMA fighter. He is an outstanding jiu-jitsu guy. There's no question about that. When it comes to grappling and jiu-jitsu, he is absolutely outstanding. But to me, this was the problem. Bryce Mitchell is a much better MMA fighter. It's not even a question. He's a much better MMA fighter. It was just a question of, can Gracie pull him into some sort of, game to where he's able to find a submission, which he almost did. So credit to Kron for that. But that's why you can't just jump guard, right? That's exactly what can happen. A guy like Bryce Mitchell, you could tell Bryce was pissed off. He's like, what the hell? Is this guy going to fight or not? He just keeps, every time we get close, he just jumps, wraps his legs around me and plays guard. Bryce Mitchell's like, the hell with that. The minute they hit the canvas, boom, nasty elbows, and was able to put Kron out. It was a violent finish by Bryce Mitchell, a very good performance by Bryce Mitchell, because again, there's only so much you can do when a guy is kind of just charging forward and acting like he wants to strike, and then the minute you get close, he just jumps and pulls guard. So there's only so much you can do when you know that a guy is going to be trying to do that the whole time. So again, hard for Bryce Mitchell to be super entertaining here, because no matter what he does, Gracie's going to try to pull guard and turn this into a jiu-jitsu match. So again, That's the strengths of Gracie, so I get it, but you got to add some more wrinkles into your game. MMA is not what it used to be back in the day. Maybe at heavyweight you could get away with something, but in these other divisions, guys are too well-rounded. Guys are too good everywhere. You can't just come in there with only wrestling or only jiu-jitsu or only boxing. You got to have and be able to blend the different things together. So this was a good performance by Bryce Mitchell. I don't want anyone to take anything away from Bryce because, again, there's only so much you can do when you fight a guy like Cronin. I mean, don't you remember when he was out there against Charles Jourdain, how embarrassing that was? Charles Jourdain's like, how am I supposed to do anything? Every time I try to get, to this guy, he's just trying to tie me up. And, so it makes you boring in a sense. But I thought Bryce Mitchell did a good job here. Landed 147 total strikes, landed 2 takedowns, which again, those takedowns, they are takedowns, I guess, but Gracie was just jumping and pulling guard. The submission things got a little hairy there, but significant strikes. Bryce Mitchell definitely easily won that battle, which I think we all assumed was going to be the thing. Craig Gracie's not an MMA fighter. I don't think he should be in the UFC anymore. He's like, I've made these improvements. You're going to see this new version. I'm not sure what was new other than scooting around on the ground or whatever and trying to, get someone to come into your guard. That's not enough, what we just saw. I literally said Craig Gracie could show up to a cardio kickboxing class and get outstruck. It's that bad with the striking. It's that bad. And when you're in the UFC. This isn't like, some little fun league that we're in here. This is the cream of the crop. And you're in there getting a ranked opponent, which you never should have gotten. You never should have been near a main card spot. And you never should have gotten a ranked opponent. I don't know, just other than the name, right? Is the way it made it seem. Or they were just trying to give Bryce Mitchell a very winnable matchup. Because in terms of an MMA fight, Bryce Mitchell is the much better MMA fighter. But again, with Gracie, there's always that chance that you could possibly fall into a submission, which again, I almost pulled that off. Good performance by Bryce Mitchell. Don't take anything away from him. There's only so much you can do when a guy is just literally trying to approach this like a jiu-jitsu match. There's only so much you could do. I would have liked to have seen Gracie make a lot more improvements in terms of his overall game. So we didn't see that, and I don't think we'll be in the UFC much. He'll be in the UFC much longer. And like I said, respect to Craig Gracie, outstanding jiu-jitsu, the Gracie family, the lineage. We get it. We know that. They're outstanding. They've done amazing things for the sport and this and that. I'm just saying in terms of MMA, you got to make improvements. You got to be more well-rounded than just a one-dimensional guy at this point. Moving on, we have Nate Landwehr versus Doo Ho Choi. This was, to me, one of the shockers of the night. And what I mean by that was, I'm not shocked that Choi won the fight. I thought that we were going to see Nate Landwehr turn this into a brawl. I thought that we were going to see him get hurt early on, but then eventually get the timing down and pull Choi into just kind of a backyard scrap. You know what I mean? And Nate Landwehr is able to find a way to turn this into a chaotic, back and forth exchange type of deal to where he was able to, get Choi out of there and find a shot. But man, what we saw from Choi last night was one of probably his best performance to date. He was very patient. His boxing looked outstanding. The way that he was able to just casually just move forward, throw shots to the body, set things up, and he was attacking the lead leg of Nate Landwehr, which is a great game plan when you're going to be in there against a guy that's durable, a guy that's going to want to push forward, is take away their base. Don't allow them to just walk forward like a zombie, hinder the movement, make them more of a stationary target. It's exactly what you saw from Doo Ho Choi. This was his best performance to date. I mean, he looked nuanced. He looked like this is an example of making a lot of improvements. This was Choi 2.0, right? Gracie's out there like, oh, I'm improved. Not really. This was improvements, right? You got to see, the way that Choi was setting up his shots. He was being very patient. He wasn't getting into a brawl with Nate Landwehr. And to me, the X factor was his grappling looked outstanding, right? Nate Landwehr is not exactly a slouch when it comes to the grappling. He got dominated by Choi in the grappling. Choi was just throwing him around, basically advancing positions, controlling him. I mean, Landwehr had no answers for anything, right? It says he landed, 32 shots here. Choi, 114. 4 takedowns to Landwehr's 0. Significant strikes 78-25. This was an unbelievable, basically a shutout, right? Like a pitcher in baseball pitching a shutout. This was basically that, right? Choi looked outstanding. This was his best performance to date. The power, the timing, the way he was utilizing the boxing, attacking the lead leg of Landwehr, and then the grappling. I mean, Choi with a well-rounded skill set and an answer when it comes to the grappling. don't sleep on this guy in the featherweight division. I would love to see him get a ranked opponent next. Whenever you go out there, you open up the main card to where there's a guy in Nate Landwehr who's got this personality that gets people to kind of want to tune in to either watch him win or watch him lose. He's someone that's kind of marketable in a way, right? And then Choi goes out there, steals all of that momentum, all of the moment there, goes out there, absolutely spectacular performance. And to get a finish inside of the third round, I thought was incredibly impressive because I thought as the fight played out, that was something that was going to favor Nate Landwehr. But turns out, Doo-Hoo Choi, this is a guy that made spectacular improvements. He has clearly been, going into the toolbox and into the tool shed, trying to figure out some different things and sharpen the blades on some things because he looked outstanding. Best performance to date. Can't say enough good things this morning about Choi. That was a spectacular performance. Moving on to the featured prelim, we had Dominic Reyes versus Anthony Smith. This went, I think, pretty much how all of us thought, right? I feel like we were expecting Dominic Reyes to go in there and get a KO or get a finish over Anthony Smith. And this is great for Dominic Reyes, right? All the things that he's been through, I feel like he got so hung up on I almost beat John Jones. And then he goes out there and suffers a couple of nasty KO losses. But again, good fighters, right? Jan Blachowicz, great fighter. Yuri Prohaska, great fighter. And then the Ryan Spann KO, that's the one that concerned me, right? Because Ryan Spann, he's not top of the heap in the division. He's an exciting fighter, but he's very hit or miss. He's got good power, but he's not top tier in this division. And then after that, I was like, maybe that is it for Dominic Reyes. But then he comes out there, against Dustin Jacoby. We just saw a different guy. We saw a guy that seemed like he was, found himself again mentally and got that confidence back when it came to fighting, goes out there and gets a finish over Dustin Jacoby. And I'm like, okay, I think that we have a revived Dominic Reyes here. And I was like, this is kind of the perfect matchup for him against Anthony Smith coming into this fight. Because with Anthony, he's got good jiu-jitsu. He's got good submissions. And he at times, he shows up and he's aggressive and he can be an issue, but he's older. He's had some crazy things happen, with his coach passing away and his very good friend, which is, I can't imagine, right? And that's why I was surprised that Anthony Smith decided to go through with this fight. And to me, what this looked like, guys, right? You saw Anthony Smith emotional for the walkout, and he comes out there. He's very aggressive in the first round, right? He was coming out like a zombie, and I was like, it looks like you're going to need a baseball bat to take Anthony Smith out tonight. Like, he was aggressive. He was coming out with a point to prove. He was not afraid of anything, and he was putting the pressure on Dominic Reyes, and I'm like, if he could do this for 15 minutes, who knows? Maybe there's a shot that Smith can, land a shot or find a submission, or, Reyes gets tired. And I was like, wow, this is Anthony Smith. Like, he started to get a little reckless, right? He was like, sticking his tongue out, eating some shots. And I'm like, okay, that's the emotions taking over here. That's not what we want to see. And he goes back to his corner. And I think what kind of just did him in was seeing that, his coach and friend was not there. And that, to me, because he came out in the first round so aggressive, all of this energy, all this, and then he came out in the second round and it was just a different guy. I think the emotions caught up to him. I really didn't want to see Anthony Smith get in there, considering what happened. I'm like, it's just, I think you should take some time. It was too soon after, and I was concerned about that because, again, the stuff that goes on in your personal life, you got to make sure you take care of that. Fighting, in my opinion, definitely comes second, and again, how important, the coach and friend was to him. I'm just like, and then you saw the emotions from him, and I was just, you almost feel, I felt so bad for Anthony Smith, and then Reyes, I'm sure he's like in an awkward spot. He's like, I don't really want to go in there and beat this guy up. Like, I feel bad, but again, you have to do your job. And Reyes goes in there. He great performance, good movement by Dominic Reyes. He's got an outstanding left hand. He's got really, really good kicks. And again, former college football player, very athletic dude. How can you not like Dominic Reyes? Super respectful guy. Just, him and Anthony Smith shared some good moments at the end there. It was all respect. And at the end of the day, like, I would like to see Anthony retire. I was hard on him coming into this fight, considering he didn't look very good against Roman Dolidze and some of his other performances. I know that he was able to get that submission over Petrino, but that was kind of a Hail Mary, right? Because if that doesn't happen and it stays on the feet, I think Anthony probably gets finished, right? But again, found a way to win, so props to him. But considering everything that happened, I just thought Anthony should have took some time and then came back. It just seems like, the first round came out very aggressive, was doing some reckless things, like his corner was trying to get him back on track, like, hey, that's not what we want to be doing here. But again, sometimes if you could get a little reckless against a pretty styled striker like Reyes, it could give him some issues. But you just saw, I think the emotions eventually started to take over, and that just kind of impacted Anthony Smith. I mean, I get it, man. To lose someone close to you like that, it's very hard. That's why I wanted to see him take some time away. It's just, I feel bad for Anthony Smith, and, it's a tough situation because, again, you don't want to take anything away from Dominic because this is crazy. The guy that, he had all these ups and downs has found a way to kind of get back on track here to where now he's back into the rankings. He gets another win here. He's heading in the right direction to where I think, Dana White was saying, I think it's time for Anthony to hang it up. So we'll see what happens, but either way, Dominic Reyes, good performance. And, he's in the rankings now, right? So there's no kind of tune-up fights here. So I'll be curious to see what they do in terms of matchmaking for him. There's some good options out there. I don't know who that is, off the top of my head right now. Good performance by Dominic Reyes. Moving on to the welterweight division, we have Vicente Luque versus Themba Gorimbo. This was crazy, right? This was a fight that, Vicente Luque, this was vintage Luque, right? And one of the time, back in the day when Luque was really on a tear inside the welterweight division, he was one of those dark horses to me. He was a guy who, you were worried about on the feet because he has outstanding power. And then if you get hurt, for God's sake, you go to the ground and you're worried about getting submitted. So it kind of has that Charles Oliveira like effect here. He just showed levels, right? And I just didn't have a lot of confidence in Luque coming into this fight off of what we had seen, especially in the Buckley fight. But again, I think Buckley's just that good in this division because Gorimbo, I think he came in a little cocky, a little arrogant, and didn't show a lot like respect in terms of like respect, man. But in terms of the fighting, I thought that I really believe that he thought he was going to run over Vicente Luque, considering what happened his last time out. Can't sleep on a veteran, man. Can't sleep on a guy that is still young in the game. And Luque, I know he's got some miles on him. Outstanding performance. And the first thing I thought after seeing that, I am so glad that Nick Diaz was not in there for this fight because I think that as a massive Nick Diaz fan, I think that it would have been bad. That was a pissed off, angry, point to prove Vicente Luque. He looked dangerous. The striking was on point. That right hand that he landed just slipped Gorimbo's right hand, landed a nasty right hand, hurt him. And if you get hurt by Luque, good luck because he's going to find a limb. He's going to hop on your neck and find a submission. This was an outstanding performance by Vicente Luque. Could not have went any better. It didn't even take a minute for him to find a finish here. And a couple strikes landed from Gorimbo. But again, that submission from Luque, the way he hopped on that, it was absolutely spectacular. So a big win for Luque. He's probably going to get a step ahead in the rankings now, considering he took this fight. It was supposed to be Diaz, and then now, Gorimbo comes in here. Big win from Vicente Luque. Maybe again, he's not done, and I think that this is a win that's going to help him get back, get that confidence back, considering that lackadaisical performance against Joaquin Buckley. Huge win for Vicente Luque. No question that was a vintage Vicente, and a guy that has a lot left in the tank. So outstanding performance. This wasn't even close. This was just, he made Gorimbo look like a fool. Outstanding performance by Vicente Luque. Moving on to what I thought should have been on the main card. This was one of the best Grappler's Delight matchups we've seen in quite some time inside the UFC between Movsar Evloev and Aljamain Sterling. Now, when this fight started, I was actually blown away at the fact that Aljo was able to just dominate Evloev early on there in terms of the grappling. He was just, the speed, the awkwardness, the athletic ability of Aljo coming from 135 up to 145. And, we kind of see that in the sport, right? Guys that are at the lighter weight class, they come up, they may not have the same power, but they may have better technique. They may have a little bit more speed, they might be a little bit more agile. And I think that that's what we saw early on. And I think Movsar was incredibly surprised by the strength of Aljamain Sterling and kind of the speed and the grip when Aljo was able to get ahead of him. And a lot of people are calling robbery here, right? And I think that this was a very close fight, but I do believe that Movsar did enough to win because I'm going to tell you why. When you look at the you look at the total strikes here, 136 of Movsar to 45 of Aljo. The problem was Aljo kind of was winning a lot. Well, not kind of. He was winning a lot of grappling exchanges, right? He was winning a lot of control time and he was winning a lot of minutes. but Mobsar would eventually reverse, or he would get out of those positions, and then he was a lot busier with the grappling, right? Where Aljo kind of approached this like a flow grappling match, right? Where like he was just trying to win, on control time. He was trying to basically pin Mobsar and win on points, to where Mobsar's like, okay, this is a fight. Whenever I do get out of this position you have me in, I'm going to land some shots here. I'm going to land some strikes. And I think that that's exactly what you saw, right? And Aljo landed 6 takedowns, to Mobsar's 4. If you told me coming into this that was what was going to happen, I'd say you're crazy. I just didn't see that happening. I was beyond impressed with Aljo in this matchup, and he is a real problem in this division, especially over the course of 5 rounds, because again, Mobsar is outstanding wrestling, outstanding grappling, so to find a submission on him, I didn't think was very likely. But if someone was going to do it, I thought Aljo could maybe get that done. But at the end of the day, significant strikes. Aljo did land 12 to Mobsar's 8, but it's right here for me. It's the activity, 136 to 45. And I think whenever you're not looking at the statistics and you're watching the fight live, I go, look, I thought Mobsar was going to come in here. I thought that he was going to win everywhere the fight took place. I was surprised by how good Aljo was doing in the grappling, but it was the activity in terms of the striking from Mobsar whenever he was, winning the positions, whenever he was able to reverse the grappling against Aljo, he was landing shots. And I think that that's what the judges saw. And to me, it's a fight. It's not just a wrestling match here. And I think in terms of the fight aspect, Mobsar did win the fight when it comes to that. But either way, this was a very, very good competitive fight. These were some of the best, most high-level grappling exchanges we've seen in quite some time inside the UFC. When they booked this matchup, I was super excited, right? I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's just grappling, it's going to be boring. It's boring if you have someone who's so much better than somebody in the grappling and they take them down and they're helpless and there's nothing they can do. But when it's 2 guys that are so good when it comes to the grappling, you're going to see someone take someone down. You're going to see someone reverse the position and then they end up on top. And both of these guys in their fights are used to being the hammer when it comes to the grappling. And that's what I was excited to see, was what happens when they're the nail. And we're going to see Mobsar on bottom. We're going to see Aljo on bottom. How do those things look? And this was a great back and forth, outstanding matchup in terms of a grappler's delight. I did think Mobsar did enough to win the fight. I thought he looked good on the feet. He landed a massive right hand on Aljo. But the way Aljo switches stances, throws those kicks, cuts those angles, he's a tough guy to deal with, right? I don't think Aljo is completely out of it. I know maybe the UFC is not his biggest fan, right? So, but when it comes stylistically, he's a problem. Whenever you're controlling Mobsar like that and you're having success in the grappling, that's very impressive. So to me, what hurt Aljo in this fight and ultimately cost him the fight was he was winning in terms of the grappling at a lot of moments, just wasn't busy enough with it. Wasn't threatening with submissions, wasn't landing any strikes. I think if he did a little bit more when it came to landing some strikes, maybe the decision could have won a different way. But I thought Mobsar definitely won this fight, even though it was very close. Outstanding matchup by both guys. This was one of the highlights of the night to me, was just seeing outstanding back and forth grappling exchanges. This was like watching a flow grappling match. It was that high level. So I really enjoyed this one. Moving on to the welterweight division, more controversy here with Randy Brown versus Bryan Battle. Now, I think this was the wrong decision. I thought that Randy Brown won this fight, and I'll tell you why. Bryan Battle, he was like, I was surprised that Randy Brown was pushing for the clinch. Bryan Battle was the one looking for the clinch. He's the guy that missed weight by 4 pounds. He's the guy that I think was looking to try to wear on Randy Brown, considering out in space, especially early on. Randy's one of the most dangerous guys in the division. He's got outstanding striking, very good timing, and I think Bryan knew that. I think he absolutely knew that. Came into this, he missed weight, whatever the reasons are, I don't know. It's just really unprofessional. And to miss by 4 pounds, that's really not even close. So some people, they hear 4 pounds, like, that's not that big of a deal. In fighting, that's a big deal, missing 4 pounds. So he comes out there, he was basically just holding them up against the fence and throwing some knees here and there. And out in space, Randy Brown was way faster. He was landing some nasty combinations, the way he was mixing up the boxing to the body. And you see the total strikes here. A lot of these were pitter-patter shots in the clinch from Bryan Battle, 109 to 80 here. Takedowns. Randy Brown, he had more success with the grappling, right? He had some good takedowns of his own. And the significant strikes here, 60 to 57, right? Randy Brown landed a lot more damaging shots here. And I think when you watch this, the judges just saw, or 2 out of the 3 judges saw, look, Bryan Battle, he's controlling the clinch. He's, holding him up against the fence. He's landing some good knees here. He's landing some shots here and there. I thought Randy Brown was, out in space. He did a great job. Landed some takedowns of his own. And I thought he won the fight. I thought it was close either way, but I thought Randy did enough. I think that Bryan Battle was literally just stalling the fight. How people rip on, Mario Bautista, which fair play, right? When he was out there against Jose Aldo, holding him up against the fence, just kind of wasting away minutes to, hope the fight ends here, to avoid basically getting into a scenario to where you could possibly get caught with a shot. That's what Bryan Battle did here. That's what he did. He knew Randy was dangerous. You heard him say, I knew Randy was dangerous and this and that. He was just pushing him up against the fence, just trying to kind of win a boring decision here. That's how I approached it. The UFC or the judges rewarded that. Dana, I think, even thought Randy Brown won the fight. It was close either way, but I thought Randy did enough. I thought Bryan was stalling a lot in this fight, landing those pitter-patter shots just so the ref kind of wouldn't separate. I thought Randy did more. So either way, good performance by both guys, pretty good performance by both guys. I thought Randy Brown, dude, you can't sleep on. Outstanding striking, good power, good speed. He's a tricky guy in the division. He's tall, he's wiry. And, Bryan Battle, a guy that, a lot of hype coming into this, right? Coming off the Ultimate Fighter. He's looked good in the UFC, goes out there against Kevin Gisset. Outstanding finish. And when you do that in France, you get on the microphone, you dye your hair blonde, you're Brian Dubrog's battle, and you're going in there and winning by finish, there's going to be high expectations. And, and everyone's getting on him for, wanting the booze and this and that. That's the character, right? He started that kind of at the Kevin Gisset thing, kind of playing this heel role. I think that Bryan Battle's really leaning into that, so good on him from a marketing aspect. I thought Randy Brown did enough to win the fight here. So either way, it was close, but I don't know. I was more impressed with Randy Brown. I thought he landed some good shots to the body. He was mixing things up a little more to me. I think Bryan Battle was just kind of stalling. But either way, I thought it was kind of close. All right, to the early prelims, we have Eryk Anders versus Chris Weidman. Now, I picked Eryk to win this fight, and I didn't think it was going to be by finish. I didn't think it was going to be a vicious ground and pound finish by Eryk Anders. This is... Coming into this, I said, look, I think Chris Weidman is one of the most overrated fighters in UFC history and one of the most overrated champions in UFC history. If Anderson Silva would not have been a goofball messing around in that fight, Anderson Silva would have still been, he would have won the fight. So he gave Chris Weidman basically a win there. Fair play to Weidman for getting it done, but I've always thought he was a very overrated fighter. His striking, especially now that he's quite a bit older, he doesn't look particularly good. The wrestling isn't the same considering that he's older. You're just, again, when you get older, the grappling's just not going to be the same as it was when you were younger, which is understandable. But Eryk Anders, a little bit younger, a guy that Eric's not particularly great in a specific area, but he's well-rounded, right? He's got pretty good boxing. He's a big guy. He's athletic, former football player. He's definitely an athlete, and he's got a very well-rounded skill set, so he's pretty good wherever the fight goes. I figured that he was actually, I figured he was going to out-grapple Weidman. I thought that he was going to push him up against the fence, win kind of a dirty, grimy, boring type of fight. But he took his ass down and he beat the hell out of Chris Weidman. He landed some nasty ground and pound. I thought the fight was even going to stop sooner. And then Weidman's like, why did it get stopped? Dude, there were so many unanswered strikes. Probably 100 unanswered strikes. Weidman, hammer fists, elbows, just kept beating away. You see 121 to 27 here in terms of the strikes, and then 62 to 16 in terms of the significant strikes. But again, early on, that was a nasty shot by Chris Weidman where he was able to actually drop Eryk Anders. Anders landed a good shot that was able to hurt Weidman as well. This was a good fight considering both of these guys are older. No one's competing for titles here anymore. You heard Eryk. He's like, look, I'm not chasing the title. I'm not chasing any of that. I got 2 fights left, and then it sounds like he's probably going to call it. So he's probably just looking for guys where he's competitive with, guys that are maybe a little bit older as well, and don't exactly have title aspirations, not some young up-and-comer. Completely understandable, and I respect that, the fact that Eryk recognizes kind of what he wants and where he's at in his career. So this was probably the biggest win of his career for Eryk Anders. It's a big name in Weidman. I know it's kind of the, I guess the shell or the ghost of Chris Weidman. Still impressive because Eryk looked good, dominated him in the grappling. Good performance overall by Eryk Anders. Moving on to just a couple more here. Cody Durden, Joshua Van. I've been telling you guys, man, Joshua Van is that guy. He is absolutely a savage. He's legit. Outside of getting finished by Charles Johnson in that fight, Joshua Van's a stud. I picked him against Edgar Charas on short notice, to where a lot of people were afraid to do that considering it was short notice. I'm like, look, if anyone's going to come in there and has the ability to win a short notice fight, it's Joshua Van. He's got outstanding boxing. He's got a very good calf kick. His grappling is really the X factor to me. He's made so much, tremendous improvements in terms of the offensive and defensive grappling. And I'm like, look, I don't see how Cody Durden beats him. I know he's got some power. He likes to move forward. He's an aggressive guy. But if you're just going to kind of rely on just being a meathead style of fighter against Joshua Van, you're going to get picked apart. He's got way too good a movement, way too good a boxing. His footwork is way too good. And you saw that. Outstruck him 184-74. Durden did land a couple of takedowns, but I figured even if he takes down Joshua Van, he's not holding him down. Van will find a way to work back to his feet. 165 significant strikes to 70. When Joshua Van digs his feet in and he's letting his combinations fly, he's trying to hurt you. Throwing nasty shots to the body, nasty shots upstairs. One of the best boxers in the sport. I've said it before. I think he's very underrated in that department. You know, we have Topuria, Jan, Holloway, Poirier. Those are the names that kind of come to mind. Joshua Van should absolutely be in that discussion. He is a very fun flyweight. And again, he's finding himself in a position where, you know, maybe he's in the rankings now. He's going to get some ranked competition moving forward. It's an exciting time to be watching Joshua Van, because I think he's not many because considering where the flyweight division is right now, you don't have to do a lot to kind of earn yourself a title shot or put yourself in a very good position in the division. He's got a fun style. He's got outstanding boxing. He's made tremendous improvements. The guy's only 23 years old. 23 years old, made these kinds of improvements. I mean, beyond impressive. Joshua Van's a savage. Outstanding performance against Cody Durden. Michael Chiesa versus Max Griffin. This one kind of surprised me a little bit. I figured we would see a little bit better of a version of Max Griffin. I thought that his footwork and his movement, even though he's a little bit older, was going to be maybe give Michael Chiesa some issues. But again, the grappling of Michael Chiesa, the wrestling, the submissions, the way that he's able to close the distance, he's kind of a bigger dude in the weight class. This was a great performance by Chiesa. Closed the distance, got a hold of him, landed some decent shots, was able to take him down and just control Max Griffin. And again, if you're getting taken down and you're on your back against Michael Chiesa, it's going to be a problem. The guy's got good cardio, good pace, and he's got outstanding submissions. As you saw, he was able to eventually get Max Griffin out of there. But again, I saw this as a avenue of the way this fight was going to go. I thought that this was probably the most likely, but I could have seen a scenario to where Max Griffin, guy that's been in there against some pretty decent competition himself, considering, you know, these guys are both a little older going in there against each other. Anything can happen. Good performance by Michael Chiesa. Don't know exactly what he wants to do in his career, right? He's an analyst now. He's a little bit older. I don't know that he's trying to necessarily make a run for a title or anything. Good performance by Chiesa, especially to get a sub over Max Griffin. I think it's impressive. Good performance by the Maverick. Moving on, Clay Guida, Chase Hooper. Chase Hooper's an absolute stud, man. And these two grappled each other in a grappling match, and Chase Hooper won that as well. So I figured this is a fight, right? And Chase Hooper, he's got more power on the feet. He's made a lot of improvements in terms of the striking. And when it comes to the grappling, he's just better, right? Clay Guida's a short, kind of stocky guy. He's older. He's in his 40s now. You know, he's got this relentless style of fighting. That's not enough to beat Chase Hooper, because you even saw Chase Hooper out grappling him, out wrestling him. And I figured if because how was Clay going to win this fight? He doesn't really have the power to hurt Chase, right? So it's not like he's going to stand at distance because Chase Hooper's longer. He's going to, pick him apart from there. So his only options were to kind of spring in and out, land some shots to where eventually he could get clipped with a shot by Chase Hooper, or get in close and, try to land some shots there. But that means Chase Hooper can get a hold of you. So Chase has outstanding submissions, first round finish, but by submission, nasty armbar. Dude's an absolute savage. I would love to see him against a ranked opponent next. I know some people might feel kind of different there, considering we haven't seen a lot from him in the lightweight division so far. But I think the win over Slava Claus, to hurt him on the feet, hop on a submission, that was a very impressive victory for me as well. And again, when you have that many, you're that good in terms of the submission department, and you're getting better with the striking, I think he's an issue for a lot of guys in this weight class, especially some of these guys that like to grapple a lot. I don't think you're going to be so willing to just go in there and take Chase Hooper down, considering how good this guy is with the submission. So very impressive performance to me from Chase Hooper. Again, Clay Guida, old, way over the hill, still to go out there and get a submission over him. Good stuff by Chase Hooper. Last but not least, Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Brzeski. This went exactly how I expected. Look, Kennedy's going to be a problem for a lot of these guys, right? When he gets to the top of the heavyweight division, if he makes it that far, that's where he'll run into some issues. But these guys who are just kind of guys, right, inside the heavyweight division towards the back end, he's going to pick them apart, right? Coming up from, he was a light heavyweight, coming up to heavyweight, he's just a step ahead, right? He's a little bit more technical. He's a little bit faster. His defense is sharper. He slides in and out of range really well. And for a little bit there, I was like, oh, Kennedy's kind of giving Lucas some hope here, right? Lucas was landing some good shots. He was moving forward. Kennedy was kind of, getting a little comfortable. And I'm like, is he getting a little cocky here? Started to throw some good front kicks up the middle. But the difference in this, right? Even though you see Brzeski landed some more shots here, it was the precision in which Kennedy Nzechukwu landed those shots. He picked his shots very well. He set up the left hand nicely. His right hook was on point. That front kick, that stabbing front kick up the middle is a nasty weapon that he likes to use. Kennedy's a problem in this division. I think he's outstanding. I think that the way he mixes up the striking and the way that he, just keeps you right at the end of his strikes, he's going to have an advantage over a lot of these heavyweights, considering heavyweights, not the most technical at times. He will do very well against these back-end guys in the division. But when he gets up a little higher, I think he'll run into some issues. But for now, these kind of guys, Kennedy's just going to pick them all apart. So great performance by Kennedy Nzechukwu. He was a big favorite to win this one, so it was expected for him to go in there and kind of make this look easy, which he did. Great performance by Kennedy Nzechukwu. But if you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Let me know what you thought of the event down in the comments. Subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you do not miss an upload. I would appreciate it. See you next time.